Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. The fact that you are willing to take a few minutes out of your day to consume my content really does mean the world to me. Today we are reacting to the Acolyte episode 3. The positive energy from my intro is now gone. I don't know what to say, guys. If you've been following me on my journey with the Acolyte, you'll know I found episode 1 a mixed bag. But I enjoyed episode 2. And I even finished my episode 2 review by going, I am excited to see what happens in episode 3. I was so let down. And it's not even funny. I remember sitting there watching it, getting excited, and it just dropped. Like, I'm almost speechless. I'm genuinely almost speechless at my pure disappointment for this episode. And in fact, I read an article after I watched the episode, and it just bashed the episode. And the whole time I was sitting there reading it going, okay, no, but like, people have to find something redeeming about this episode. And so I read a few more articles about other people who were also able to get a screener for this episode. It's difficult. I saw a lot of articles literally calling this the worst episode of Star Wars ever. And I don't think they're wrong. I genuinely don't think they're wrong. So let's just start off by stating the obvious facts. This entire episode is a flashback, basically looking at the events that separated Osha and Mae. I was talking about how I was enjoying these characters. I wanted to see them interact more as an ensemble cast. I wanted to see what was going to happen next. Yet we get sent all the way back. And yes, it's supposed to be this mystery. Yes, we're supposed to be going, oh, we're finally going to figure out what happens. But this was so lackluster. This was so lackluster. Words can't even describe it. So ultimately, the episode starts off with Mae and Osha as young girls, and we find out where they were raised. We meet their mother. All of this supposedly wonderful stuff. Firstly, this was all just boring. This was all just seriously boring. But on top of that, you can feel the pandering in this episode. We're dealing with a clan of witches, all female, and this just screams the Force is female, the future is female. I've made this point many times in my videos, and you can watch all of my super controversial videos I've ever done where I'm talking about Doctor Who or The Sandman or Rings of Power. I don't mind politics in my stories if the story comes first. This episode, you could just tell they're like, okay, we want to tick off these political boxes. Now how can we write a story around this? That's how they obviously came up with this, because you could sit there going with it with a book and go, okay, cool, checklist, tick, tick. Okay, they mentioned that, tick. This was the most pandering episode I think I've watched of almost anything. And you know how I was talking earlier in the videos, I was talking about like all the articles I read about other people that got a screener as well. One of the articles was like, is this the gayest episode of Star Wars ever? And then they actually broke down how many members of the LGBTQ were in it, etc, etc, etc. And at first I thought it was such a dumb list. But as I was reading it, I was kind of just like, wow, that's a bit of an eye-opening one. Like, yeah. It was frustrating. This episode was just pandering. This entire series now exists to pander because of the situation. So, Flip, I know I've dedicated a lot to this, but holy smokes, I did not enjoy that element of this episode at all. The pandering was so blatantly obvious. And the story was so secondary. In fact, let's talk about the twins for a second, right? The entire show is built off of the premise that Mae and Osha think one another is dead, and that has been their motivation throughout the entire series. Yet we finally get screen time of these two characters together, and they're not likable. Firstly, I hate to be that guy. The children actors weren't good, and I understand how difficult performance can be. I really do. As someone who's an aspiring actor, as someone who has worked on a lot of projects, I know how difficult acting can be, especially when you're very new to the industry. but they weren't good. Or at least the directing didn't help them at all. But the chemistry between the characters wasn't there either. And they felt like there was no love between these sisters. Like, they were fighting in almost every single scene they were in. They disagreed on everything, all the way down to basic morality. So I really don't feel that there's supposed to be this deep, loving connection between the two of them that is going to be so powerful that it's going to motivate one another to do these amazing things they've been doing in the show, because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. These two sisters did not love one another from what I saw on screen. So having this flashback almost even destroyed the adult versions of these characters, because now their motivations do not make sense. If they had kind of just left this up to the viewer's interpretations, then at least we can go, oh, I imagine that they had such an amazing relationship when they were younger. You can't imagine that now because they were fighting all the time. It wasn't amazing. They didn't have a good relationship. So this episode retroactively ruins the first two because now their motivations don't make sense. Okay, back to the Witch Coven, which everything they did was just cringy. And the whole point of this show, I think they're trying to make Mae the Acolyte seem more, acceptable by going oh, the Jedi were evil in what they did. The witches sucked in this episode. They obviously were not morally correct characters, but the show was trying to portray them as such and trying to portray the Jedi as evil. The Jedi, we didn't see what instigated the battle between the Jedi and the witches, but the Jedi definitely seemed like the good guys in comparison to the witches in this episode. I did not like the witches at all, and they had the cringiest chant ever. The power of one, the power of two, the power of many. That was the lamest chant I have ever heard. One hell of a way to not make me take you seriously. I know a lot of people have been complaining about Disney Star Wars, and this feels like the most Disney Star Wars episode ever, where the story is non-existent, the political pandering is front and center. I am trying to, in many ways, also just approach this episode from a critical point of view. What did this episode do right? And I can't find anything, because it even destroys the structure of the whole series. As I said, I was looking forward to episode 3. I was enjoying the characters. Then we get sucked out of the main story to go to this flashback episode, which disrupts the momentum of the entire show. And I think there's a reason why they made this episode 3 after the first 2 pilot episodes that came out on the same day, because this episode just is not that good. It's not good, actually, at all. I genuinely agree with a lot of people who have said that this is the worst episode ever. It's not good. It doesn't feel like Star Wars, unless you count the political pandering. I didn't enjoy the mother's relationships with her daughters either. They're obviously trying to portray her as this loving matriarchal figure, but she just came off as incredibly bossy, believing that her children are stupid, they lack agency, they don't have the ability to make up their own minds or pursue their own beliefs. A lot of silliness in this episode. And it's frustrating because I was genuinely looking forward to it. I genuinely had hope that the Acolyte would be good. So, yes, this one episode sucked. It sucked. There's no nice way around that. I'm really hoping that episode 4 is better, because I really enjoyed episode 2, and hopefully in the next episode we're going to carry on with the main story. So yeah, guys, let me know down in the comments below if you enjoyed this episode or not. Tell me if you think I'm being crazy, if I'm being too harsh, because I can understand that I'm sounding very negative right now. I do understand that, but I want you guys to tell me if you think it's fair or not. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like. Do not be afraid to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I hope to see you guys again in the very next video, where we talk about episode 4 of The Acolyte.